everybody, and welcome to This Week in X, presented by Crushing Comics. I'm your host, Crisis with a K, and I'm talking at high speed because this is an all lightning round program. We are going to be talking about Wolverine, Black, White, and Blood, issue number 3. It's an anthology book. It's got different creative teams on every story, and all we're going to do is give you our hot initial reactions to this book. We might do some spoiling. Who knows? It depends on what the stories are about. But fun fact, Fariha did not have the chance to read this issue this week, so based on our lightning round reactions, Fariha will tell us whether or not she is going to enjoy or possibly look into reading each of these stories. Okay? That's the premise. Yeah. For Wolverine, Black, White, and Blood number 3, we're going to do our lightning round. It's going to go Tyler, Harry, then me. And then Fariha will comment on if we have hyped her enough to care about that particular chapter of the story. So, Tyler, this first story is called 32 Warriors and a Broken Heart.
Broken Heart.
It is John Ridley's writer and George Fornés artist. Clayton Cowles letters all of the stories. Tyler.
I like the story. And even though I'm not sure how Logan and Mariko won when they did not defeat the 32nd Warrior, I still like it. I feel like Fornés did not do his best here because, don't get me wrong, the action and the storytelling is great, but if you know what he's capable of, you know that the story or he himself did not make full use of his ability to render beautiful panels using light and shadows. So I think that is my minor complaint. So even then, this is my favorite of the 3, and it gets a 3.5 swords out of 5.
Harry.
All right, so this was definitely my favorite story in the issue. This is probably my favorite story in this entire anthology series so far. It is great art. Tyler, I know you have a point that this might not be his best work, but not even the best Fornés is still like better than almost everything on the market. And even more so, the story by John Ridley. This was the one story so far where I felt like I had, for lack of a better term, a whole meal. Like this was a really great self-contained thing. I felt like he used great use of the pages, great use of like the less amount of space than you usually had. And I was just satisfied at what it was done. I was like, this is what I want from this kind of series.
I think that this was utterly brilliant. I would go back and insert this into the Wolverine omnibus. It is so perfect a Wolverine story. John Ridley, I mean, we're talking about an Academy Award-winning screenwriter here. And if you have not read his other history of the DC universe, I'm only one issue in because I feel like I need to really sit with it. It is one of the most powerful pieces of prose I have ever read in the superhero genre. I could not possibly recommend it any higher. And that's just the first issue. I'm like not even ready for issue number 2. So this was, I just think it was so perfect because it was a Wolverine story that if you want to slot it into his continuity, you probably could. But if you just want to take it as allegorical, being about the nature of Wolverine's relationships, you could. And the great thing is it's about him being a father who's a good father for once. It feints in the direction that it's going to be about Wolverine, the terrible dad, because he's always terrible and he never cares enough. And then it actually is about his heart at its base, which is brilliant. I think Fornés delivers a beautiful job here. I think, if anything, the lack of subtlety in some of these drawings that Tyler points out is because Fornés actually uses shading and his color artist so much to bring dimensionality to his artwork. And this is him just working in such stark relief that it's almost jarring. But I think this is one of the best Wolverine stories of all time. So Fariha, is this a story that you will read?
Well, after that resounding, a yes from 3 of you, yes, I will. Definitely. This gets a...
I noticed that none of us said who he's fighting here.
That's important.
Yeah, the Silver Samurai, which connects to Mariko and the whole broad history of Wolverine. But this is a lightning round, so we didn't choose to mention it. We're not going to go back for it. Story number 2 is Burn. Donny Cates is the writer. Chris Bachalo is the artist, also lettered by Clayton Cowles. Tyler.
This is the worst of the 3 stories. The story itself is okay. It dealt with the observer effect somewhat, but man, Bachalo's art is confusing and messy, and I'm saying this as a Bachalo's fan. Like, I'm a huge fan of his art. in this short story, I could not tell what is what in which panels, and except when they're like two talking heads, and even then sometimes it's a little bit out of focus because the art is so packed in each panel, and the lack of color and the somewhat poor usage of red, which is brown in this case, definitely adds to the confusion. And Buckles has a particular style. He likes to zoom in on a quarter of a hand, half a thigh, or something like that. And it does not work at all. 1 beer out of 5.
Harry.
Okay, so I don't look ahead to who the creators are when I start reading, and I opened, I got to this page, I was like, oh, Chris Bachalo, I love this artist, he's one of my favorite, great, oh, it's Wolverine, great, and then I see him talking to this other guy, and I'm like, who is this? I don't know who this is, and then it's the friggin' Cosmic Ghost Rider, and I realize it's a Donny Cates book who cannot get away from the friggin' Cosmic Ghost Rider. He can't help himself. You got to put him in the Wolverine anthology. I hated this. I think this was awful. I just think you're right. This is awful, Chris Bachalo art, and I love him. I really do. But nothing. It's really hard to pay attention to anything that's happening. It makes no sense. And I find this character that Wolverine's having a beer with to be incredibly annoying. I think he's kind of like, the new Deadpool for this new century, just like way outstayed its welcome. I found this super, super irritating. I'm going to give this like a 0.5.
So I used to like Chris Bachalo at a point. I like 90s Chris Bachalo, but I find him to be so messy and hard to discern. And I feel like he's still got his fans, and that's great. Like what you're going to like. But to me, to boil him down to black and white like this really made the point of what is going wrong with his art. He's really relying, and we've talked about this in the series before, on the colorist and the contrast to kind of like do all of the work of making his work legible. And if anything, I had a moment here where I was like, God bless anybody who is coloring Chris Bachalo, because I cannot tell. I mean, I spent whole minutes just zoomed in on single panels being like, what must this be? The thing though with Cosmic Ghost Rider is, he's finally escaped Donny Cates' grasp, and a few other people have had a crack at writing him a little bit. And this is just his gag now. At first, his gag was being in space and doing stuff. And his gag now is kind of being on Earth and thinking he's making connections with people, or trying not to make a connection with people, but by doing that, he's messing up history. That's just the whole gag. So look, either you like it or you don't. But the thing that really, I would say, came away from the story for me is it's not enough of a Wolverine story, and it's not enough of a Cosmic Ghost Rider story. Like, we had some really cool moments with Cosmic Ghost Rider, like fighting Juggernaut on the behalf of Wolverine, and I felt like it could have been like more. And then there were moments where Wolverine was so frustrated in fighting the Juggernaut, and it felt like it could have been more. It kind of just felt like very surface level the whole time, even if I'm forgetting the fact that the art was, quite frankly, horrible. So Fariha, do you think you're going to want to check out this story?
So, as a fan of the actual identity of Cosmic Ghost Rider, the 616 version of that character, I hate that character. Like, I hate that character from when he started in the Thanos story. I mean, I was gagging when that happened, because the fact that it's not Deadpool and it's this other character, it drives me insane, because that is not who that character is. So it's an automatic no.
Okay.
Just because that character is in there, it's an automatic no. I don't read comics with that character in it.
Also, by the way, if you have read the Juggernaut limited series or are thinking about reading it, it's really hard to figure out where this would place in terms of Cosmic Ghost Rider existing, Krakoa existing or not, and the Juggernaut limited series, because that starts and ends with Juggernaut in a really interesting place that doesn't really match up. It's really
not Krakoan era. It has to go.
Oh, that story also has Cosmic Ghost Rider in it?
No.
Don't tell me that.
Okay.
No, it's actually really good. It begins and ends with Juggernaut in a very specific place that does not really match up with the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
The final story in this issue is Red Planet Blues by Jed MacKay, possibly Mackay, I don't know, and Jesus Saiz, and it is also lettered by Clayton Cowles.
I mean,
Tyler.
This is a fun one. I mean, I do like the fully shaded work here, but for some reason, I think it looks a little bit artificial and maybe too shiny. I mean, at the end, I mean, I do like goofy Ileana. So, when she was trying to put on the MAME helmet at the end, I had a good laugh. I think it's kind of slightly better than average, kind of slightly, maybe 2.75 red helmets out of 5.
Harry.
So I didn't love this, but I had a nice enough time. I really like Jesus Sai's art in general. I think he's pretty fantastic, and I think this is some really good use of his art. But the colors, the actual use of red is kind of uninspired. It doesn't really feel like it's being expressed creatively. It's just more like we had to cross a box and make sure they look red. But that said, this is a story that includes the Death's Head robot bodyguards from Planet Hulk, and the Gardner site where Ex Nihilo was in the Avengers book. And
Look
I like
both antennas go up.
I know. So I was like, this story's not amazing, but it's two things from comics that were really important to me formatively. So I guess this is what like nostalgia is like. I don't know. It was nice. I'd give it three messed up AIM helmets out of 5.
I think this is a story that had like all of the elements of a really great story, and maybe it didn't like get all the way across the line with all of the elements, but I was very enamored with all of the elements. Like Jed MacKay, I was very skeptical of him as a writer at the beginning of Black Cat. I was like, really? Like, is this actually funny? Is this actually good? And he's just won me over. He's one of the few writers at Marvel right now that can write one issue and make it really feel so packed with action, with information. I think even in the story, like there's so many little nods, layers, jokes. It's just as long as the other 2 stories, but it feels somehow longer even than the John Ridley story, which seems crazy to me. He wrote a very comedic Ileana. If anything, I'm like, get him on an X-Men book. Let me see him. Yeah. Let me see him write some other X-Men. Like, let him audition on Wolverine. Sure, but I don't need to see him write Wolverine again. So I'm really interested in that. And then Jesus says, we never get to talk about him because he never does X books. This guy is off the charts amazing.
It's crazy.
I mean, his work on the opening arc of Mark Waid's Doctor Strange title, his work on the reboot of Star Wars last year, and the thing that makes him so great is he does his own ink washing, maybe even digitally. I don't know what his process is, but even when somebody else colors him, there's just this beautiful gradation of shading in his work that you don't get on a lot of other digital colors. The colors do that with the shininess, which I don't like. And so this to me was just like sumptuous. Like I just wanted to like lay down and touch the pages physically because the shading was just so great. So like, and what Harry pointed out, I was stunned that he pulled back to Hickman's first arc on Avengers, such a hit. I love Death's Head back from the 90s. So anything Death's Head is a hit for me. So like, again, I come back to my opening statement. Was it a brilliant story? No. Did I love every single thing about it? Yes.
He drew a really great Brave and the Bold anthology like in the late 2000s.
That is before I knew him. Yeah. I don't know where I originally know him from.
It was a little looser, but really, really good.
Yeah. Just blows me away every time. So Fariha, would you be interested in this story?
You said Ex Nihilo.
He's not actually in it. Just to be clear. It's just his garden bomb.
Yeah. It's like it's connected to him. Like, I'm in. I'm waiting for him to show up in X-Men. So
I know, same.
So anything that even gives a little hint, I'm in.
Well, folks, that has been our coverage of Wolverine. Red, white, black, white, red and white, black and red. Black, white, and blood.
White and blood.
Black, white, and blood, number 3.
Losing it.
And I think, we might be almost net positive on it. It depends on how you took our interpretations of the 3rd story. But decide for yourself. And we will be back. If they continue this anthology book, we will keep giving you our lightning round opinions on it here on This Week in X. Maybe next time one of the other ones of us will take a turn not reading it, and Fariha will join in the hard sell. I don't even know. But because this is the fun of getting together and talking about comics with friends, like I have to say personally, I read comics in a complete vacuum for on and off for over 25 years. I had not a single other person in my life to talk about comics about. And they're so much better this way because why, Fariha?
When it's better when you read it together.
It's absolutely better when you read it together. So on behalf of Fariha, Harry, Tyler, and myself, thank you so much for watching This Week in X, and please be well.
Bye.